on a Friday. Hello and welcome. It's This Is Going Well, I Think, with David Cooper. I'm your host, David Cooper. It's This Is Going Well, I Think, the show where no one's listening, no one cares, the show where every episode's the last episode. Today, phenomenal lineup. In just a few moments, science expert Dan Riskin is going to join us to go over the science news stories of the day. Well, that's why he comes here, but will we get through any? The answer to that question left as an exercise to you, listener. But one thing's for sure, Dan seems to think you can tell the difference between hot water being poured and cold water being poured by just listening to the sound of it. No visual and no information about whether the water's hot. I don't know if I believe him, but we're going to find out whether that's possible in a little game that you can play along at home. Then sexual health and consent educator Samantha Bitty and I are going to talk dating, worst dates. It's summertime and she's been busy, and so should you be. Or not. Do what you want. Date if you want. Fuck if you want. Do whatever you want. I'm not your mother. And then we're going to talk a little bit about ghosting on the apps. Finally, we'll go all the way to London, England, to catch up with foreign correspondent Tony Five on very important current events news reporting. Spoiler, we'll do none of that. But I've got a theory that I've been sitting on, and I haven't read any history books, and I refuse to look up what the real history is, but I have a profound hypothesis about why getting hit with bird droppings on your head has long been considered good luck. So you can look forward to Tony Five for some of the stupidest content this side of the Mississippi. I don't even know where the Mississippi is. Is it in Mississippi? What is the Mississippi? These are all Mississippi-based questions you certainly won't find an answer to during the rest of this show. And now, science expert Dan Riskin. Science. What does it mean? What do we know about it? I certainly know that the first letter in the word science is S, but I'm here with someone who knows a little bit more than that.
I know the second letter.
What is it?
C.
Wow. Fantastic.
I guess we're done here.
Yep.
This has been a good segment. We talked science for 100% of it, which is 100% more than normal.
We only talked 33.3 repeated percent of science, because we only talked the first two letters, and there's 6 letters.
Oh, well done. Well played. Okay, so there was math there, so that's part of it, because we did fractions and percentages. That's math. So we've done math, we've done science, we need engineering. We have any engineering? Oh, I'm drinking out of a can. I'm having some bubbly. So that's these are miracles of engineering. Let me have a sip.
Bubbles and math. I mean, I can pick any two numbers below 10. I can add them.
Okay. I'm going to go with 9 and 9.
Okay, that's a hard one. 2 other numbers. They have to be different numbers.
1 and 3.
4. Boom. Nailed it.
Yeah.
Daniel Riskin, welcome.
Well, thanks. You know what? I have a sound effect that I want to play. Remember, because of you, I got this thing that I could make sound effects on.
I feel like you're mad at me because you probably don't use it every day, but
I use it. This one, I needed to use it. I had a science story, which is about how you can tell the sound difference of hot water versus cold water being poured into a cup. And I needed the sound up. So I went and got the sound off the internet and clipped it and put it on the thing. So now I just push a button and it makes the sound. So Kira, first I'm going to play the 2 sounds. You got to tell me which one's cold water being poured into a cup and which one's hot water being poured into a cup. Are you ready?
I'm so ready. Wow.
Okay, here's the first one.
That's our baseline. What's the next one?
Okay, and here's your second noise.
Yeah, second one's hot.
Second one's hot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can tell. Isn't that neat?
I didn't know that I could tell until I was like, how am I going to tell the difference?
But I know. That's an amazing thing. I think we underestimate our ability to use you're sensing temperature by sound. That should be theoretically impossible, but you are. And it turns out that it has to do with the fact that when you pour hot water, you get larger bubbles entrapped into the water, and they have larger bubbles, so they have lower resonant frequencies. And so the sound profile includes a lot more deep sounds than when it's cold water and the bubbles are smaller.
See, you're coming at this from a science angle. I'm more shocked at it from a psychology angle. It doesn't surprise me that it sounds different. Maybe it does a little. I'm surprised that I knew. Without knowing, I knew.
Yeah, that is, yes, it is interesting from the science perspective. Like the human perception piece, I often think about how we can echolocate without realizing we echolocate. I'm writing a chapter right now for a book about bats, obviously, as one does.
Always with the fucking bats, Dan.
Always. But in this case, it's not the bats doing that. It's the bats echolocating. And this time, it's about how humans can echolocate too. And I start the chapter by saying, isn't it obvious that if you were blindfolded and brought into a gymnasium and asked to speak, you would know that you were in a space of some kind, like a gymnasium, versus if you were under the covers of your bed, or if you were in a bathroom stall, or if you were in a kitchen. Like, those places all sound different just from the way your voice bounces off the walls. And we don't even think about the fact that we can do that. But we can actually tell what room we're in just by the sound of our voice bouncing off the walls.
I wonder if you said to someone you might be public speaking right now, here's a blindfold, and then you put him in a bathroom, in a church, in a gymnasium, would they be more nervous? Just based on the sound of their voice echoing. Also, you made this about echolocation because of bats. I wonder if we could tell how attractive someone is based on how their farts smell. Like, these are the questions that people aren't asking.
Right. Well, attractive people don't fart. I think that's really the answer to that question, isn't it?
Well, I was about to say I have IBS and fart all the time, but I actually just proved what you're saying.
Yeah, prove my point.
Yeah. No, I'm shocked that I knew that without knowing. I heard the first one being poured, and I'm like, I don't know if that's hot or cold. I'm not going to get this right. And then it was just so obvious to me, and I haven't done this experiment before.
Yeah, and now let me tell you something. The only reason we were able to have that wonderful experience is that I bought the Rodecaster Duo.
This episode brought to you by Rode, the maker of the Rodecaster.
Which is a fairly expensive little piece of machinery. I believe I paid somewhere around like 600 or 700 Canadian dollars for it.
Whoa.
I know. I live in a country with weird tariffs. I don't know, but it's quite expensive here, and also our dollar's not so strong. So what looks relatively cheap in America is very expensive in Canada. So anyway, I bought the thing, and I plugged it in, and let me tell you, I have just been having a lovely time with it, and here it enhanced our conversation. So where did I get the name of this? When I needed to know which device I should buy, who did I ask? I asked David Cooper, and what did he tell me? He said, Rodecaster Duo, this is what you need. And he was right. He was right.
I toured. I bought this piece of equipment when I waited. I had a crappy interface, a crappy microphone. I waited till I got my first check for doing commercial radio, and then I decided, okay, I'll buy the professional equipment. But I wasn't sure whether, I don't know, because it's made out of plastic. It's like hard plastic, but plastic nonetheless.
Yep.
And then I toured.
I think there's metal inside.
There is. And I toured the iHeart Radio studios, both in Toronto and in New York. And let me tell you, the one in New York. The one in that chum building downtown Toronto, no offense to my former and maybe your current employer, a bit of a dump. I mean,
listen, we have a tenth the budget in our country because we have a tenth the people.
True. The first time I went there, I thought, wow, I'm in a commercial radio station house with 10 stations, and it's so nice, and soundproofing and cushy chairs and microphones and wonderful audio equipment. I thought it was the nicest thing I've ever seen in my life. Keep in mind, I'd only been to community radio stations until then. And then I saw the one in New York. And I'm like, that dump that I saw, I'll never go in that building again. Anyway, long story short.
That's why you left Canada for America. It's a good metaphor, or what's the word for it? When it's like a small example of something that's
microcosm, Dan, micro.
Thank you. That's the word I was looking for.
You're welcome. It's also what I call my penis, my microcosm.
Right.
I'm sorry.
I know you do.
So I'm going to cut that out. I mean,
no, you can leave that in there.
Really lowering your image.
I don't like that I just said that about your microcosm.
Thank you. Well, some people like microcosms, others macrocosms. Okay, but I went into both these studios, and just hanging out in hard cases along the walls were spare Rodecaster Pros to lend people doing remote broadcasting. And then I thought, well, if these folks are using them, I should be using them.
They just give them out to people who are doing stuff for them?
Yeah, because it was the pandemic when I saw about these spaces, so there was a lot of like remote doing shows at home kind of stuff.
Yeah, and here we are just acting like the pandemic's still on. I'm in my house, you're in your house.
I think the CDC declared the pandemic over.
Did they?
I don't know, maybe.
I stopped listening after a while. I stopped listening to myself. I was like so sick of that stupid virus. Yeah,
even the model citizens who told everyone you're a bad person for not wearing a mask, like I just don't care anymore. Like I was on a plane the other day, and there was a kid coughing everywhere next to me, not wearing a mask, and it didn't even bother me. And then I got sick. I tested negative, but I got sick. I just didn't care.
Yeah.
It's good though.
Yeah.
That's what it used to be.
Yeah,
like.
That's what we want.
Yeah.
We want to live in that world where we can not care that we got a little bit sick because we're not scared we're going to kill our grandparents.
Anyway, back to the amazing water.
Rodecaster Duo?
Oh yeah. Oh well, that too.
Or the water?
Well, the Duo. I always thought you were mad at me because you didn't really use it.
I know. I feel really good that we got to have this experience where you got to see, because I never could have done this with you. Otherwise, I would have done this. Okay, which one's cold water and which one's hot water? Or
it's wild. You couldn't have played those effects. Up until Rode launched their Rodecaster product about 5 years ago, no radio personality, no person being interviewed, no radio station, no podcast could play audio clips. They really pioneered that. So you would have been completely unable to play those clips. What I'm saying is you could have just played the clips using something else.
Yeah. But I could have. Well, that would have been a lot of work. But you know what? I'm actually, there's an analogous situation coming up. I have a talk that I'm supposed to give, a virtual talk for a client. I'm not saying who. And they are insisting that I use their software for my slides. So I have like these slides that I show, and I use Keynote, and the transitions are perfect, and there's like a zoom in and a zoom out, and it's all very nice. And they're insisting that I use their software. So for that, they're like, give us all your slides in PowerPoint. We'll pull it into the thing. And so I give them all the slides, and they pull it in. And now it's like broken, and it's not working. And I'm going to look bad when I give my slideshow, when I give my talk. And so I'm freaking out. And so I'm thinking I might have to use like some software to make that work. Like you can get... Like there's something called Ecamm where you just like, you can run basically a production studio from your computer where you can like make a box in a box, and like you can have your slide with your face in a little circle in the bottom, and you can just send that out to a chat so that like that's what people see when they're looking at your camera and Zoom. And I might just have to do that, just like I did to taking control of the sounds in this conversation instead of having an engineer do it. I did it myself. I might have to do that for video next.
Are you using this interview as kind of an open mic, testing out the various topics you might talk about in your real media appearances? Because I'm thinking you're doing that, because that was the most boring thing I've heard in maybe 10 years, Dan.
Okay, good. Well, then I won't use it for the other people I talk to. Thanks for that feedback.
All right, we'll be back with Dan Riskin's practice podcast appearance that he'll use to make sure that everything he says on other shows is good. He's almost like using the show as an open mic. He's almost like a comedian.
I love it. Tries their stuff out. Read it off a piece of paper and say, yeah, you didn't like that one? Okay, I won't use that in a real audience. Yeah, that's me right now with you.
But you're using this as an open mic, almost like a stand-up comedian. And do you know what the stereotype of stand-up comedians is, Dan?
No, I don't.
Well, we're going to find out with Dan Riskin coming up in just a moment. We are back with science communicator, educator, expert, man of the bats, Dan Riskin. He was practicing out material on the show to Let me try that one more time. He was practicing.
Who's practicing now? Who's practicing now, David Cooper?
Now that you said that, I got to leave it in the interview because it's like part of the flow. I was going to cut that whole mistake out, but I'm leaving it in.
You can't now.
Little piercing behind the window here. Piercing behind the curtain. The window? The curtain?
Piercing behind the taint, I think is what it's called.
Peering behind the curtain. That's the one. Sometimes I cut out mistakes that are made. You're using this show as an open mic to test out your topics, to see if they were suitable for real media appearances. You're blabbing on about who knows what. But it got me thinking about stand-up comedians. Because they practice out their material at open mics. And while this story has nothing to do with stand-up comedians practicing out material, Jesus, can't talk today. I'm leaving that in too.
Good.
This story has nothing to do with stand-up comedians practicing material. It does have to do with stand-up comedians, Dan. What is the stereotype that gets thrown around and asserted like truth about stand-up comics?
Stand-up comedians often have a shtick about what a mess they are. Yeah. They often say things like, oh, I'm in therapy, and oh, I used to do drugs a lot, and oh, I have so much anxiety.
Are you making fun of me right now, or is that...
I know you feel seen, but listen, I'm just saying it's a shtick. Is it true? Are comedians really different from normal humans, or from muggles, if you will? Should we call people who aren't comedians muggles, or is that too much?
I think it's too much. I don't know what muggles are, so it's too much.
You don't? Okay.
What are muggles?
So let's well, it's from the Harry Potter universe. People who are not magical are muggles. Have you not read or seen the movies of Harry Potter?
No, I like trans people. Okay. No, I'm kidding. I'm not laughing that it's... I'm not laughing at transphobia. I'm just laughing
it was clearly a very funny joke, which is why you are such a good... What is it? Comedian.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
To be clear, for those that felt offended, I think, J.K. Rowling's views on that subject are awful. I just wanted... The reason I laughed is because I was trying to throw you off. or
Yeah,
shock
no,
you?
it was. I thought it was a funny joke. Like everybody. Anyway, anyway, so are they a mess? And so people did a study. So what they did is they were like, we need to get a whole bunch of comedians, and we have to get a whole bunch of people who aren't comedians. Not comedians is easy. We'll just use this software, and like people can sign up. I think they used Amazon Turk or one of those, right? Like one of those online things. And they got people from all over America, and they got a nice diverse population. But for comedians, it's hard to find comedians, and so you had to kind of network. And so it was like, hey, comedians, you know any other comedians? Can they be in the study? Okay. So then they networked, and they got 108 comedians, but it was all through like friend of friend, social media, stuff like that. So non-random sample. And that came back to bite them in the bum. They analyzed the data, and they had this nice story where they asked, like, have you ever gone to therapy? Have you ever had substance abuse problems? And they found these differences, as expected, that comedians were more likely to have gone to therapy. Go ahead.
I was reading this article that you sent summarizing the study, and they say that comedians have malignant self-regard. I've never heard it put that way, and I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, part of the problem is that there are these like standardized tests, and then there's like a very strict definition of what this standardized test actually measures. And it's, oh no, it's not anxiety, it's malignant self-regard. It's, oh no, it's not self-hate, it's self-whatever. Like like they're not neurotic, they have anxiety. And it's like, well, at some point, are we splitting hairs, or like, I guess those are different. Like to people that are really, that have big issues with them, I guess it really matters as you're trying to figure out what you're going to do with it. But you know, for the big picture, like, are they different or not? And so, anyway, they found these differences, and they started trying to explain them too. Like, they're like, okay, so listen, if we ask comedians, have you ever gone to therapy? They're more likely to say yes. Does that mean they really did need more therapy, or are they just more comfortable going to therapy because of who they are? And is the therapy what helped them become comedians? Like, they really dug into these things. But then after they had done all these analyses where they found that, yes, comedians are more likely to have done therapy. Yes, comedians are more likely to have had substance abuse problems. Yes, more likely to have anxiety. They realized that their non-random sample of comedians were almost all from New York. They were 66% from New York. You, sir, are from where?
New York.
I thought you were from Toronto.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I mean, I live in New York. Where from
Okay, so you're from New York right now. So, but that's my point, is that you're in New York. And so...
It's a stressful city. Since I moved here, things have gotten worse.
Exactly. That's what I need you to say to back this up. Because they were like, maybe our control group isn't a good control group, because they're like, what we're really comparing is comedians who live in New York to normal people who aren't comedians who don't live in New York. Maybe we should be comparing comedians who live in New York to people who are not comedians who also live in New York. And they did that comparison, and all the differences went away. And they're like, yep, comedians are different. But by the way, also it's because of this New York thing. No, they're not different. What they failed to find a significant result when they redid their analysis. So comedians are different from normal Americans, but that's only because New Yorkers are different from normal Americans, and a lot of comedians live in New York.
I feel like they would have to do New Yorkers who are also performers who perform in front of similar size audiences to really like, is a Broadway singer the same as a comedian who plays clubs about the same size as a Broadway venue? Then you could really drill into it. Otherwise, it's like, it could be performers, it could be New Yorkers. Like, there's so many things that they haven't checked for that could cause this study to be out of whack.
Yeah, and New York is a diverse place with a lot of different like areas and a lot of different experiences. Like if you live in Manhattan or if you live in the Bronx, like you're going to have a very different experience day to day, like in terms of, and also like how nice the place is where you live is really going to matter. Like there's a lot of different stuff. And then also how often you're in front of a live audience is obviously going to have an impact. Did you grow up in New York or did you move to New York? Those are all big questions. So anyway, a little bit unsatisfying, but I did pick that story for my weekly email of science stories. I did pick that for you. In fact, I was so excited about it. I composed a message. I pasted. I was like, "Look, it's an article about you." And then I deleted that message and said, "No, I'm just going to put it in my email because then we can talk about it for sure, and I don't have to burn it. Because if I send it to you, then I'll feel weird sending it out in my email."
Well, I sent you something that I thought was absolutely fascinating, but I guess it's kind of dated. I think the story came out. I mean, it's an old story, but a great video summarizing the story came out in February. But it was about the invention of the blue LED and how that basically revolutionized all science, all technology. Like we wouldn't have the iPhone without this invention.
Really?
Yeah.
Because what it did is it made it possible to do any color of LED in the rainbow, right? That was the big thing, is that we only had two, like red and green, was it?
Yep.
We had red and green, and we couldn't figure out how to make a blue one because for an RGB monitor, you need the blue. And so with reds and greens, you can make some colors, but not all the colors. And then once you have the blue, you can make all the colors. So all of a sudden, LED technology can be used for any kind of display.
That's exactly right. But this guy who discovered it is a fascinating individual who kind of went rogue.
Really?
You know, his company wanted to fire him, wanted to defund the project. Management shifts, and it's a fascinating story. Let's shelve it. I want you to watch this video because it's a wild tale, and we'll talk about it, I don't know, in a few weeks.
Okay, can you provide a link for viewers so that they can watch it too and then they can be part of it?
Yes.
Put it in the show notes. Isn't that what's done? Is that you put it in the show notes or something? Or what do they Google? What's it called?
The podcast description?
Yeah, put it in the podcast description.
Yeah, I'll put it there, but it's like, what's this YouTube channel? It's pretty good. It's called like Veritasium. Veritasium. Yeah, it's just...
Oh, yeah, that guy's also from Toronto. No, yeah, I think he's from Toronto. He's Canadian for sure. I think he grew up in Australia, but he's Canadian or something like that.
Yeah, his accent's hard to place.
Veritasium. Why it was almost impossible to make the blue LED. That guy's a good storyteller. That's great. I look forward to watching it. That's
Dude,
good.
You gotta watch it. This video.
Okay, I'll watch it. Jeepers. You're like my mother.
For those who enjoy this podcast, which really is no one, this is just an exercise in when I eventually get people who enjoy my work, go to the podcast description. I'll have a link to this video, and me and Dan are going to talk about it eventually. I hope.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it next time. I hope. It's 33 minutes and 44 seconds.
It's long. And, it's long.
Yeah, this guy's, he does a pretty good job. I'm excited to watch this. One time we had this, so when I used to work on a TV show called Daily Planet.
Heard of it?
It was a show about science. And this person came in and they were like, hey, guess what? LEDs change what color they emit depending on temperature. So we took these LEDs and we put them in dry ice to get them really cold. And then we put electricity to them and they totally change color. Wow. And it was amazing. But the cameras in the studio didn't register the difference in color. And so to the director who's in the control room, he's like, they look exactly the same. I'm like, they're totally different. I'm like freaking out. I'm like, this is the most amazing thing. He's like, we don't see it. We can't do it. So it got shelved. We never aired it on TV because you couldn't see it at all. But I'm telling you, if you have some dry ice and some LEDs, a little project to do at home.
That's totally relatable. I think people who...
A lot of people have... Well, everybody's got LEDs.
Everyone's got dry ice. Stay-at-home dads, freelance foam salesmen. I mean, all kinds of people. Seamstresses.
People who sell sperm. Like if you sell bovine sperm, that's often stored on dry ice.
Oh, well, you just really brought it to cow sperm, or bull sperm, I guess. Cows are ladies, aren't they? Yeah.
Well, I mean, who does it belong to, really? It's for all the cattle.
Sperm is all of ours. Dan, what a pleasure.
What a pleasure.
We did a lot today. We covered exactly one story.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
It's pretty good. I'll see you in a couple weeks. Or I'll see you in 1 week. Up next, sexual health and consent educator Samantha Bitty joins us to talk about some of her wonderfully bad dating experiences and ghosting. Let's see what happens with sexual health and consent educator, friend, quote-unquote expert on dating, an expert in the sense that you know a lot about it, but you've been having some trouble with it. So, Samantha Bitty, welcome to the show.
Hi.
I feel bad for saying quote-unquote expert. I meant those quotes in a different way than it sounded.
You know what? It's so messed up because I always reject the idea of like being an expert at something like sex and dating because it is so nuanced, and like I think it would be ridiculous for anyone to say they're an expert of those things. Like I have a lot of expertise, but the way that you qualified that as like I'm having a terrible time was, yeah, it was, it's just, I just have to sit with that. I have to think about that.
I'm sorry. I'm losing my Canadian accent over time, but I feel like the American sorry is like telling someone to F off, and the Canadian sorry it's much sweeter. It sounds better,
Right. Either way, I'm offended.
You should be. Well, I'm an expert at being bad at dating, and I'm a sex expert in the sense that I'm an expert at being bad at sex. So I guess we're all experts.
In some way or another, yes.
It's summertime. People are dusting off their dating shoes. I don't know. What do people wear on dates anymore?
I guess it depends on the date.
It's not sweats. Although maybe sweats. I don't know.
Actually, I was having this conversation with a friend of mine. So there is a fellow who's in my life where him and I have I would say the term dating would be a very strong use of the word for what he and I were doing over the course of, I don't know, however many years, kind of circle into each other's lives whenever he was single and, see him on an app again, we'd match, we'd do whatever, blah, 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 blah. We kind of came to a realization recently that we are really good friends and like don't need to be smashing. And like, that's totally fine. We're both looking for different things. And we talk all the time and he shares with me a lot about his experiences dating women and like, namely straight women. And then like, I share my experiences of like dating men or queer women or whatever. And so we were talking about like at home dates, like inviting somebody over. And I was saying that if I show up to a date at like a dude's house and he's like not wearing sweats, like he's not wearing the kind of like, whatever, like quintessential like gray sweatpants, like he's like wearing jeans. In my mind, I'd be like, oh, I thought we were gonna fuck, but like obviously. Sorry, I know you have to.
No, it's fine. I'll bleep it, and now we keep going. It's funny. I kind of take the opposite to you. There was someone I was sleeping with, and we were just sleeping together. I think she was just trying to get back at my friend who she'd broken up with. Not important. But on our first few dates that would start at a club, or not a club, I don't go to clubs, start at a bar and go to her house or my house, she would do up, jeans, the whole thing. And then the last time we ever saw each other, I just came over to her house. She answered the door in sweats. We did it, but that was the end of it. And so in my mind, if someone's starting to wear sweats for even a hookup, it's the beginning of the end. I guess it's a different experience.
I think it's gendered.
Sure.
I think it's gendered.
This was also like 2012.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. You've been out of the game for a while.
A minute. Yeah.
I have a joke with a few of my friends that if I have a date over, because my baseball obsession and all that, if I have a date over, it's a home game. And if I go to someone else's house or I leave, it's an away game. And I have my like away outfit. And then I've got like my home field outfit. And my away outfit is often something like if I'm just going to someone's house, it's often something like I'll have like a velour zippy and like a skirt or something like that where it's like it's cute and it's casual, it's like textural, it's like soft, like there's an invitation there. Whereas if it's at my house, I'll wear like something more suggestive.
Okay.
Let's say, yeah, like I had a date the other night where it was I have a you might get there's more underbutt if I have a date at my house.
Underbutt.
There's more satin. Yeah, there's more satin, there's more underbutt, there's more visible nipple. Like
love it. Love it. You're mentioning baseball uniforms. I like that you keep a bat in the front of your house. I don't have too many friends that have a bat at the front door.
I have 3.
Are they for various uses? One is for people who are fucking around in the home. One is when you got to go into the streets. And the third one is for baseball?
They're all for baseball, but they're also all for if anybody's fucking around. Like,
and if there's something really going down and there's many on your team, you could have multiple bats. You and 2 friends could go out there and achieve results.
Vigilante justice, baby. And you know what? In this economy, everything needs to be multi-use. So
even your bat.
Even my bat.
Okay, we were going to talk about dating. Worst dates. You've been on some bad dates recently. You were actually telling me one before I started rolling, but you're like, I gotta save this one. Was it that bad?
It was truly, truly, truly one of the most awkward situations I think I've ever put myself in, unbeknownst to me. Because typically speaking, when I'm dating or if I'm going on a date with someone that I've met on an app, I've screened them for like a long period, like minimum 1 week. We've exchanged voice notes or calls. Like I'm not really out here like that. Like I really need to make sure it's a good use of my time. And but I was in Vancouver for the night and just coming off of a long work trip, a series of heartbreaks. I was like, you know what? I just really want to have like a casual hookup just for fun, even just go on like a fun flirty date. And so I'm like, I'm on apps and I had 2 options for the evening. There was like a nice guy from an app that is like more relationship oriented and we both really liked the Blue Jays and we had good chat. There was like good flirtation and it seemed really like he was cute. And then there was like a straight up and down boy. Like unquestionably, this person is like, they're going to show you a good time, but it's a good time, not a long time. Whatever. Maybe not great conversation, but
you're ostensibly, you know what you're going to get with this guy.
100%. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go on the date with the nice guy. We'll go watch the Jays game. Like it was like really cute. We kind of established that there's no expectations, but like if there was a hookup, that would be cute. Whatever. I get to the date, which is at like a sports bar. He's at least 10 years older than his photos, at least, which again, it's okay. It's okay. But he was so awkward and so uncomfortable, like could not form a sentence. And I was just pulling at everything I could. And I'm like, I understand that I am like really beautiful and like, and sexy and interesting. And you might be a little bit nervous or a little bit intimidated, but it was just so glaring. And like at one point I got up to have a cigarette and I like left my jacket so that he knew I wasn't leaving because that's how bad it was. But I'm not like that. I'm not going to like dash on it like that. I'm just not that human. So I come back, he puts his hand on my knee and I'm like, oh, hello, welcome to the date, whatever. And he's like, I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm being so awkward. I'm just like, I'll settle in a minute, whatever. And I was like, it's okay. Like, it's okay. I know it can be intimidating, all is well. He proceeds for the rest of the date, which is an entire 9-inning baseball game that we weren't even winning, to just like not be able to make eye contact or like have a conversation with me. And I was like talking baseball, whatever. I'm like, is my baseball knowledge intimidating him? Like everything was just intimidating. So the game ends and he's like, do you want to get out of here? And it's like, you have no idea how much I want to get out of here, but it's going to be to my home to like, I was staying with my stepsister who I never see. And I was like, I think I'm going to go hang out like with my sister. I'm only here for the night, blah, blah, blah. He's like, oh, okay, fine. We leave the date. I get a text immediately and it's like, I don't know why I was so awkward. I wish we could have just got to the part that I'm good at, which I think he was like alluding to sex. And he's like, I'm just not good at the like sit down and talk kind of dates. And I'm like, what other kind of dates are there? Like, and I was really kind. I gave him all of this like date aftercare, being like, it's okay, it happens. Like, no big deal. Like,
you're too nice. He didn't deserve that, did he?
I am, human amongst humans.
Fair.
Right? Like, I don't need to he already felt terrible. And I was like, the thing is that ultimately I was really proud of myself because I had absolutely, even as a sex and consent educator, hooked up with people because I felt like, well, I said I would, or like, I'm already here, or I feel bad, or whatever. And like to go through the awkwardness of like rejecting this person and then like giving all the aftercare and like being like, it's okay. I just felt like after that, it took me a while. Like I had to process. And I was like, I need to retrace my steps and figure out how I got here. And this is why I'm attracted to and attract boys, because they have the confidence to come at me, and I just feel like he knew he was punching above his weight. He should have came prepared. I had a vibrator and lube in my purse. Like, you fumbled, dog. Like, you dropped the ball, and peace be with you. But oh my God.
We'll come back with worst dates, dating, and who knows what with sexual health and consent educator Samantha Bitty. We are back with sexual health and consent educator Samantha Bitty talking dating. You went on what sounds like an atrocious date. The man had, can I say, at least with you, perhaps because he was intimidated, not great social skills. But even after the date, you're texting him, you're giving him aftercare, and you're saying you're someone in this space who does the education and you're still getting it wrong. I have this hypothesis that those who are really good at giving solid advice, especially when it comes to like mental health stuff, like I'll give people all kinds of, at least I've been told, decent advice around managing depression, managing anxiety, managing procrastination. And it's because I'm so terrible at it myself. Do you identify with that?
Yes and no. Like, I think that no matter what my expertise is, I am still a human woman. I'm still going to have my own, you know, different ways of being that maybe isn't necessarily always aligning with my ideals like on 100 all the time, right? And I just try to take my lessons. I try to pay attention to how things feel and to do things differently when I'm able to identify patterns and all of that. And do do with those who can't do teach, like
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But to make it about baseball again, I was actually listening to a radio show yesterday that was talking about hitting coaches and how some of the best hitting coaches are former players who sucked at the major league level because they know what it's like to struggle. And so they have that empathy, whereas somebody who was like an exceptional hitter can't actually do the same level of support or have as much efficacy as someone who sucks. And I think that certainly all of my mistakes, all of my heartbreaks, all of the like out of pocketry that I experience in my own dating life definitely makes me a better educator. And it definitely makes me a better coach and counselor and like expert.
I think teaching and being great are two completely different skills. And when both are together, that's a very strange occurrence. I think there can be great teachers who are kind of mediocre at their craft. And then there's people who are amazing at their craft and they could not explain to you how to be good at it. They couldn't, they don't have that skill. So yeah, I'm not accusing you of being bad at your craft and being a great teacher. I'm just saying they're two different skills and we have them in different amounts, each one of us.
For sure. And like I wish I learned from my mistakes quicker, but here we are. I historically don't learn lessons. So yeah, more will be revealed. I am dating two new people though, and I feel like I'm doing well. I feel like I'm doing well.
Do you want to tell me about these people or is it just boring? It goes well, they're good people, the end of it.
Oh, it's not boring.
Oh.
But it's yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's definitely not boring. All I will say is that I was playing softball yesterday and I was playing first base and you have to stretch a lot when you're playing first base. And as you know, I'm coming off of a knee surgery. I didn't have a lot of mobility last year. And people were commenting like, oh, like your mobility has like really improved. And I said to my teammate, I was like, honestly, like I've been getting railed and that has like improved my hip flexibility. Like these are like I don't have the discipline to like stretch before a game, but like yeah, I'll get topped and it's improving my softball skills.
This is going to show how much I'm up on current baseball affairs. Earth to Joe Carter, you just have to have a lot of sex and you'll be great. Is Joe Carter still playing? Definitely, I think so.
No.
He quit 6 months ago, though. He's definitely a current player.
Sure.
No.
Sure.
I mean, 93, 94, or was it 92, 93? I should really know more about it.
90.
That's what I said. I don't know why you said 93, 94. Sorry to gaslight you. I feel bad now. I'm a baseball idiot. I'm generally speaking a sports idiot. It happens.
And that's fine. We all have our little interests and activities.
Okay, I want to do something with you. I want to attempt at least to do something that involves current events, current affairs, hot news story, hot topic. This could be educational. You know, we could make a report based in real news. And what better than Hinge's new feature that is supposed to make ghosting not impossible, but it's a more or get off the pot kind of a thing where you can't just leave a million matches open. You either got to close them off, end the conversation, or you got to reply. Eventually, they'll stop you from swiping. What do you think of that? Do you think it'll make any difference at all?
No, I mean, also it doesn't prevent ghosting because all you'll have to do is just leave the conversation. And I think this, because the whole criticism of apps right now is this, like, that they gamified dating, right? It's like Hinge or any of the other dating apps. It's essentially the same as online shopping, right? Where you fill a cart, but you don't necessarily purchase the things. Or it's like Instagram or TikTok or whatever, where you're just like endlessly scrolling. And it speaks to the like dopamine receptors in our brain. It's like we need more dopamine. And there are people who use apps exclusively for the dopamine hit. And there's like the at the end of the day, apps just want to make money. They commodify dating and sex and relationship. And if you're able to just amass tons of likes or whatever it is without actually, engaging, then I don't think it works. I don't think that prevents people from ghosting at all.
Well, don't the app makers, the app companies want the endless dopamine cycle, even if that means a crappy dating experience for those that seek to use the app properly or sincerely?
Well, apps are all losing users right now. And so I think they're all just, throwing whatever at the wall and seeing what sticks. Because I think if there are folks who are like, I don't want to be on this app anymore because I have all these likes that are going unresponded to, or like, I'm bored of this because I'm not getting the dopamine from the people that I'm matching with. So I guess in theory, if you're not allowed to like amass all these likes without continuing to, or you can't continue to swipe without getting rid of the existing likes, then if you're continuing to swipe, then more people are being like consumed. And the thing with Hinge though is that Hinge will like put they use their algorithm to decide who's compatible with you, right? Based on who you like and what your preferences are set at. And then they put people in Hinge jail. And you can only access the hot people if you like pay to like buy a rose or to be on Hinge Premium or whatever it is, right? So all of them are, yeah, they're all just about making money. And I don't think that helps to prevent ghosting. I think it's an interesting angle that they're approaching, that they're trying to take, but it doesn't do anything to address the issues with ghosting.
You've made strong statements to me that I always kind of enjoy when you make, because it's a good take about ghosting being a form of, I don't want to misquote you, but violence.
It's a form of rape culture. Yeah, I think so.
Do you think people have an obligation to respond to a match on an app? Would you consider that to be the kind of ghosting that you're talking about when you've made those statements?
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
Like, and it's the same way, like when we look at rape culture as a pyramid, right? And the ways that we imagine in other areas, there's not to hierarchize different types of violence, but there are different impacts, right? And I think about the emotional and psychic trauma of being ghosted. There is it escalates, right? So if somebody unmatches me after we've like had a conversation or we've gone on a date and we just had whatever it is, that's going to feel different than if I have had like sexual activity with someone.
Sure.
And they just, with the intentions of like seeing each other again, if they just like, unmatch me or never respond to me or whatever it is, like that is a very different thing than like not engaging in a conversation.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying. I feel stupid for even asking, because sometimes you give me these answers and they're so straightforward and I'm like, yes, I should have thought of that. Not important. What is the obligation? What is your obligation, or what do you think ethically is the best thing to do when you make a match? Should you say something, or can you just leave it hanging or immediately unmatch if you decide maybe you were swiping too quickly and it was the wrong match? Like, should I be responding to people on a dating app, or is it okay to just leave them?
This is a layered answer, I think. I don't think there's like a universal code of conduct. And if there were, nobody's living by it in my experience.
Absolutely.
What I think about people engaging with dating apps is that a lot of us have a lot of desire, but we don't necessarily have capacity, right? So we might be in like an app and be like, okay, I'm like swiping, I'm in the mood, I've got emotional availability, I'm gonna like match. And then something happens in life, like everything that's happening at the micro macro level, and all of a sudden you don't have capacity to engage in a new conversation or whatever it is. And so I think that I want to move away from the language of obligation.
Okay.
Because I think that collectively I would like for folks to move away from thinking of relationships as transactional, not just romantic or sexual ones, but platonic ones. Like all this language of like, you don't owe anybody anything or you owe this. It's like, what's this owe energy? Right? The only owe is when I work for a company or an individual and they're paying for my labor. They owe me money for my labor. When it comes to our relationships, this idea of tells me that people are lacking boundaries and they're lacking awareness of what they actually have to give and want to give, right? So if you're not giving attention or money or energy freely, then you need to sit with like, well, what are my boundaries? What am I available for? And I worry that people don't have any authentic principles that they're governing their dating lives with. They're just kind of adopting whatever is popular on like TikTok. I mean, like, this is how I should be treated without any conception of how they're treating others or what their meaningful standards are. So for me, I think that our responses should be in proportion. It should be in proportion. And if I've matched with somebody and then all of a sudden they're acting wild with me, they're being too forward with me, they're not honoring my boundaries, then I think it's totally fine to just be like, well, I'm just going to unmatch this person without doing the energy of like trying to collect them, And I wish that people weren't on apps without the capacity to actually date, but it's few and far between, babe.
Here we are. Samantha, thank you. I appreciated that.
Thank you. I feel like I talked so much.
That is all right. That's why you're here.
Okay, fine.
You win this time.
You're right. You're right.
Samantha Bitty is a sexual health and consent educator based out of Toronto. Tony 5 and I will discuss my theory as to why birds pooping on your head might be good luck. That's in a moment. What a great segment we had yesterday with New York real estate expert Tony 5. He joins us now to talk about another topic that he's just infinitely informed on. Tony, welcome to the show.
I've got that Friday feeling, David.
What is that Friday feeling?
Well, I don't know what day it is when we're playing this out, but I feel like it's Friday.
It will be Friday. I mean, it is Friday, and later today when people hear it, person hears it, it'll be Friday.
But David, what is Friday?
A day.
No, but what is it? Why do we live our lives by these rules? Why are we within these lines of basically days? What is Friday? What does it mean?
I didn't give you the right introduction. Tony 5, day philosopher, joins us. What is Friday?
I am in a very philosophical mood today, David, and I wanted to address this in our last podcast of the week. And I think to myself, what is Friday? What is podcasting? What is David Cooper?
That is a question. What anything? I feel like little kids have it right when they just keep saying why? And you just get mad, but it's a legitimate question. When you get to the bottom of anything, it's why anything.
And why anything, David? Let's answer this now in the 15 minutes we've got.
Why not anything, I guess is my response.
Yeah, I mean...
You're coming at it from the basic premise that not anything is the correct view, and so you're being skeptical about why anything, but maybe why anything is the correct view, and you should be skeptical about why not anything.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're equal views, so you should do some things and not do other things, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Do you ever think that birds could use a toilet somewhere rather than just poop anywhere?
Well, on your head. I actually have a theory about why that's considered to be good luck, but we'll get to that in a second. No, I've not considered why birds don't have a toilet.
Do you ever think if another species of creature was to see the way we behaved, like, for example, podcasting and using the toilet and stuff, they would go, I wonder what they're doing. Just as much as we find it odd that we see like a gorilla pick up his poop and throw it at something, or a bird poops from the sky. What do you think?
I mean, haven't you wanted to throw your poop at someone? It's society.
I've done it, and I was on a list for it for a number of years, but I'm just saying,
For most people, it's polite society that prevents them from flinging poop at their adversaries. Whereas if you're a gorilla, I think they're the ones who have it right.
At what point did we go from walking around naked to having this embarrassment of having to cover ourselves up?
Well, Christians would say it's something to do with Adam and Eve or Adam and Cleve or whatever. Yeah.
So Adam and Eve naked, right? And then the week after that, still naked. Couple of years, still naked. At what point did they go... I get it to cover up to protect you from the elements, but why protect your modesty? That's what I'm... At what point were we embarrassed? Well, not me and you, because obviously we've got bodies like Adonis, but other people less lucky than us, did they think, oh no, I better dress up, I better cover up?
Well, if you want to take it to Adam and Eve, I think this is what happened, although I'm on a non-fiction kick. I'm not so into fiction these days, so I won't read up on the Bible. Okay. But, see that subtle dig there at the Bible? But I guess the
author's going to kick you or put a legal case against you. Carry on.
What is this, 1600s?
Talk about attacking the weak.
You blasphemer! Off with your head. I thought when the snake apple thing, and then when God was punishing them, God was like, you know what, you're going to be embarrassed about everything now.
And that's not a good punishment, though. He could have, I don't know, put him in prison or cut off one of his testicles. But to make him embarrassed of what he looked like, that's a bit... So okay, so they were naked, and then the snake did something, and then God said, right, you're going to have to cover up now because... Wow, that's where it come from.
It is. Now, to anyone listening, it's now been 4 minutes of this, and I really want you to take a good look at yourself in the mirror. I'm breaking the fourth wall, listener. And you have to ask yourself, why are you listening to this garbage? Like, what has happened in your life, listener, that's made it come to this?
David, don't mock the people on life support. It's really unfair of you. You know they've only got a limited time left on this mortal coil, and listening to us is all they've got. The orderly has left it on this station and they've gone for the day, so they've got no choice.
The TV's broken in the palliative care unit, so they only have a stereo, and they accidentally put this on.
David, this could be the official broadcast radio of Dignitas, Switzerland.
What's that?
This the clinic where people go to die.
This could be the official soundtrack of Dignitas. We should reach out to them to see if they'll sponsor the show.
Well, why don't you get that intern to do it? Jesus.
Yeah, well, the intern. What was his name? Calvin? I think he's going to go by...
Monica.
Zach Sang is what he's going to go by.
Whatever. I'll call him Monica. But yeah, I mean... Yeah, we could be the official... I really do think there's a niche for us somewhere that we could enter, you know?
Yes.
Like a cheap hooker that would always take it in that orifice.
Got it. Which orifice? There's only the 3.
David, you're too young, aren't you, eh?
Yeah, a kid can dream, can he? I know those who heard me tease what I think about why bird pooping on people is good luck is a thing. I'm going to tell you now. I think 2,000 years ago, some schmuck was walking around. I'm imagining in Rome. There's a lot of pigeons in Rome.
Yeah.
And he's with his friends.
Everything happened in Rome, right?
Yeah, right? You know.
Nothing happened anywhere. There was like no New York. There was no Brooklyn. It was always in Rome, man. Rome was amazing. I reckon if you'd have gone back that time, you'd have like 9/11 there, bombs. Everything happened in Rome. It was one of them places.
But they had different months, so it'd be like 1384. It'd be the 13th month on the 84th day because they had that Roman calendar. Or are we on the Roman calendar?
No, we're on the Roman calendar.
Now you drag me down to your level.
Yeah, they didn't know. They just called it, I don't know, B.
All right, picture it. Sicily, 1923. No, it's the year 40, okay? And some Roman named Bruta Cassius, whatever, is walking around.
Yeah, that's a watch, isn't it?
It is a watch. Stop it! He's walking around with his friends. You know, he's not the coolest guy in the group, though. So if he did something embarrassing, he would get made fun of.
Okay.
So he's walking around on the Palazza, I don't know, whatever the Roman thing is.
Yeah.
And he's with his friends. Again, not the coolest guy in the group, but not the biggest loser in the group. You know, just mid-range coolness.
Yeah.
And
semi-geek.
And a big Roman pigeon takes a ginormous crap on this guy's head. And so what do his friends do? They all start making fun of him. You know, because it's funny when you get pooped on by a bird.
Yeah. And it's a big bird. Like you said, Roman bird.
Big bird, but eating Roman, I don't know, tortillas all day or whatever they ate.
Yeah. I agree.
So this guy's covered in bird crap. And his friends are like, ha ha, Cassius or whatever. You got pooped on. And he turns around and in a stroke of genius, he goes, joke's on you. This is incredibly good luck. Now, of course, at the time, he's lying. But then in that moment, in that day, amongst his group of friends, he becomes the coolest. He's revered for having great luck, even though he lied through his teeth.
Yes, and they all want to be pooped on. And because they can't be pooped on, because you can't force a Roman pigeon to poop, which is one of those sayings that my dad told me, because you can't force a Roman pigeon to poop on you, he is considered the lucky, the favourable one, the chosen one, if you will.
But it's all a lie to get out of all the bad things that come with being pooped on. So he's lied to everyone, and because it was a lot of dudes that day, and he was the king of the day, you know, the king of the dude group, that lie got passed down and passed down and passed down. And so that's why, to this day, it is considered great luck to be pooped on. It was just a guy who was trying to get out of being made fun of. That's it. That's all I think.
David, repackage this podcast as a historical podcast, David.
I suppose I could look up the actual origins of it, but I want to believe this. And ever since I moved to the United States, if I want to believe something, that means it's true. That's what I've learned from the great people of this country.
I just imagine that pigeon being amongst his other pigeon. My name is Pigeonus Decimus Maximus, and I will be yeah. You know, like this that's big ass gladiator pigeon who would just go around and find the weakest to poop on.
And they did, and the guy got out of it by telling a bold-faced or bald-faced lie.
It's a bald-faced lie. Again, where does that come from? Why would a bald person with a face want to lie?
That's a good question.
Is it a bold-faced lie or is it a bald-faced lie?
I think with your accent, you end up merging the two.
I say, oh God, that's a bold-faced lie. Bold-faced lie, I'm saying.
Say bold and bald.
Bald-faced lie.
No, just say those two words. Bold, bald.
Bold, bald. Bold, bald. Bold, bald.
I guess you don't
bald,
merge them, but you come
bald.
pretty close to merging them.
I've actually forgotten what I've said now. Now I'm saying balls.
All right, listener breaking the fourth wall again, or maybe at this time it's the fifth wall. Could even be the sixth wall. You've made it to 10 minutes of this garbage. Why are you listening? I'm worried. Tony and I are worried about you.
Yeah, you do need help. I mean, maybe play this back to one of your therapists out there, and they might give you some medication literally for free. I know medication out there costs a hell of a lot of money, but literally just play this to them on an iPod or something. Are iPods still a thing, David?
No, Zune. It's all Zune. Zune's coming back.
It's all Zune, right? Yeah. So yeah, or an 8-track or cassette. And, you know, play it to them and maybe they'll just sort you out. Yeah. Why are you listening? Isn't there anything else on Spotify?
I hope so. Something happens, though, when you consume art and it's the worst possible version of that art. Something happens where it becomes great. It's the art that's slightly better than the worst. That's the art you have to worry about. And I'm confident this is the worst recording ever made.
No, see, I think you're putting it like when you have the most expensive posh hot dog in comparison to like a New York hot dog, which it's so bad it's good. Whereas this is so bad, it's still bad.
God, so it's not bad enough to be good.
No, it's not bad enough to be anywhere near good. It's so bad enough that it can only be warranted as bad.
You're listening to It's Not Bad Enough to Be Good with Tony 5. We'll be back in a moment. You're listening to It's Not Bad Enough to Be Good with foreign correspondent, the very British, the very bald, the very handsome, Tony 5. Tony, welcome back.
Hello, David. Hello, listeners. I've noticed, David, that you've become quite an Anglophile recently. You drinking your cup of tea over there, and it's amazing, really. You've really taken it on board, hasn't you?
I like tea growing up. This is green tea, though, which to you, I imagine, is a fancy schmancy tea.
Oh, it's fancy schmancy tea. No, it's not. It's not a thing. But I was going to ask you, one thing that we've never spoken about a lot is your childhood. And I don't mean childhood as in, like, you know, college and stuff, but like your actual childhood, you know, like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like the sort of stuff that you did growing up. Little David Cooper in Canada. Did you play on the streets that day? You know, were you out on the streets with your friends on your little bikes? Or were you one of them nerds that used to play Dungeons and Dragons? Or were you studying? What sort of person were you?
I never did my homework and I never studied, but I loved math and computers. And I spent a lot of time before my sister got a computer in her bedroom, which I would use when she wasn't there. Mm-hmm. I would do Legos in the basement just by myself. I grew up in a very loud, chaotic household with big personalities, all narcissists, and very absentee parents, I'll describe. Yep. They're great now. They're loving, wonderful now. But back then, I don't know. Maybe it was just me. Maybe I just had unmedicated depression. But my view of my childhood was I was lonely and unhappy a lot. So I kind of just dove into computers and video games. And I was a bit of a loner. But then when I was 12, 13, I dove into my friends and was, you know, doing not really bad stuff like smoking marijuana. I wasn't doing like heroin. I meant more single digit.
So single digit ages. Like so when you say absentee parents, did you spend a lot of time on your own? So I assume like in the UK, you get up, you go to school, you come back about, I don't know, 3:34. So between like 3:34 p.m. and the time you would probably go to bed, what's that, 8, 9 o'clock? What would you do? What would the average Canadian child do?
Well, I was not an average Canadian child, but I would watch a little TV and play as much computer as I could. But it wouldn't just be video games. It would just be anything on the computer, learning to code, surfing the web, chat rooms. Like I was doing just nerdy stuff. And as a result of being so lonely and needing to entertain myself, I ended up getting good at computers, and that served me well in my adulthood because I learned all the stuff at a very young age, how to program. So when I got to uni, as you call it, or college as the Americans call it, or university as Canadians call it, computers came pretty straightforward to me because I'd been doing them for so many years.
Just natural to you.
I don't know if I was a quote unquote natural, right? Because I was just doing it so much. But yeah, I guess I was self-taught.
Self-taught. So you learn how to program and code and stuff like that. What, just from the internet? Because computers weren't really around when I was a youth. They only came out maybe towards my early teens when the first, it was like, I can remember the Commodore 64. I don't know if you've heard of that, or the Sinclair Spectrum.
Yeah.
Like basically the first IBMs. But before that, there was like Ataris. That was a computer. That was like your computer games, right?
Yeah.
No Sega. And then you had the Nintendo NES system, and only the rich kids had that. None of my friends had that. So there wasn't really computers. There was arcade games. So for you to be able to code quite early, that's really quite interesting.
So what, 8 years your junior? So I guess if you were 14, I was about 6 or 8 or something. And yeah, my sister had a clone, as we called them. Like, do you remember that? You buy a clone instead of an IBM.
No.
It was an IBM clone.
Oh, okay, yep, like a grey market computer.
And
okay.
I think it was a gray market. They'd buy like the chip, and you'd go to some sketchy company that would assemble it and be cheaper. My dad had an HP or an IBM, but my sister had a clone. My dad bought us the crappy computers, but it would have this button on it. I think it was like 120 megahertz, but it would have this button on it. Sorry, it was rated for 60 megahertz, but it would have a turbo button, which would make it go twice the speed. But why would you ever not press the turbo button? It's like you have the option of having a computer that's half as good, twice as crappy, or you just press this button and then it's fast. Well, fast for the day. Why was there a turbo button on the computer?
I know. It is a very strange system. Like it's like having these buttons that you insistently want to press. Why put it on? Just leave it on constantly. There's no reason why you shouldn't, right?
Yeah. And it had Windows. I think it had DOS, and then my sister got Windows 3.1.
Oh, 3.1. Oh, my God. I remember when Windows XP came out, and I thought that was the pinnacle. I thought, weird top technology. Nothing's going to get any better than this.
And it didn't.
And it didn't. I still think XP is probably one of the best systems around.
I stopped using Windows around XP. All right, this is getting too nerdy. What was your childhood like? Were you very sportive? Were you running around in the streets with the children? What were you doing?
Uncle child abuse, manual labour, the regular stuff that happens in the UK.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was, I used to play out a lot. I used to love going out and riding my cycle, and I had loads of friends. The reason I'm asking is I was talking to somebody who lived on my street in London, and at some stage growing up, I used to know every single car on that street, like every single house. There was very few renters. Renting wasn't a thing. It was owner occupied, like people would live there, and there was one family per house. Whereas now in London, you'll have 5 or 6 families or rooms, per house. And there's such a quick turnaround.
Was it a little suburban in North London where you were?
Yeah, well, you've been to my mum's house, right? It was just a street, a regular street in London.
I grew up in a little bit more close to the downtown core of the city. So it was a little less run around in the streets, everyone knows each other kind of neighborhood. But I had a little more of that then than there is now, for sure. Yeah,
and I don't know, it's always that thing, the rose-coloured specs, right? Looking back, that nostalgic, everything was safe. There was no such thing as a paedophile, and there was no drugs. But obviously there were things at the time that was like terrifying and stuff to people. But I just feel nowadays, it just feels a lot more threatening. I just think that kids are not having childhoods anymore, which is quite sad.
I don't know how much of that is the media pushing that narrative and it actually being true. Their childhoods are just different. Imagine you grow up during World War II, like, where the whole country is binding together and hiding in bomb shelters. Those were the days. Kids don't hide in bomb shelters together anymore.
They should hide in bomb. David, bring back bomb shelters, for God's sake. David, I think we should be sponsored by bomb shelters.
And you grew up watching television. I'm sure your parents grew up listening to the radio, and I'm sure their parents grew up reading newspapers. So, and then when the printing press became popular, I remember the day when there was a town crier at the middle of the town, and that's how we got the news.
A monkey came to town, and we thought it was a person, so we shot it. Yeah.
I just mean, I think maybe part of what you're saying is true, but I think also a part of it is we're not kids anymore. Things are different for kids, so it's just... You can't compare it, but also that cycle of older people thinking that the youths were robbed of their childhood. I think that cycle is as old as time.
It's that thing, isn't it? That youth is wasted on the young, isn't it? There's that saying that I always think, and I thought, God, it was so annoying when people used to say that to me. And now I really believe it to be true.
I don't know if it's wasted on the young. What the real saying should be is old people are jealous of the young.
Yeah, old people hate the young because they're young. But it doesn't quite flow off the tongue, though, does it?
I felt really old the other day. I'm trying to buy a house, which, of course, we had real estate.
You are.
We had a real estate expert on yesterday who really specialized in the New York market. You might actually know him. His name's Tony Five, but not important.
Okay.
I had to send a bunch of money for a down payment, to like I don't even want to get into it, but I had to do a wire. And my bank didn't want to just let me wire out money, which was good, I guess. So they're like, send us a picture of your driver's license and send us a selfie on our little app. And so I take a selfie and my beard's gray and I hadn't shaved and I could see the salt and pepper in the side of my head. Yeah. I don't know, and my forehead's a little wrinkly. I'm like, I look a little old. And then I take a picture of my driver's license where the photo was taken 5 years ago.
And you're fresh and you're young and you're gorgeous.
And just that juxtaposition, I'm like, oh, I'm old, dude. I really felt it for the first time in a long time yesterday.
What does it feel like to be buying a property, like to be a homeowner?
I guess that's another old thing. I keep thinking I'm too young to buy a house, but 37 is like not that young. 25 is young to buy a house,
Yeah, 37 is a good age.
Like, how old were you when you bought your place?
I was actually, to be fair, I was 24.
Oh my, so that's young. So that's a young homeowner. But
yeah, 24.
37, I mean, that's not like the youngest, but I'm not like a young, for example, when I got divorced, and I separated from my ex, I was 27. And when I would tell people I was a divorcee, they'd be like, what? You're too young to be a divorcee. Now when I say my ex-wife this to somebody, they just go, yeah, okay.
But at 27, were you a homeowner then? Did you live with your wife?
No, we rented. My first house.
Oh, okay.
First house.
Oh, okay. No, the only reason I say that is because now I think about how did I do it? Because the rental prices were so close to mortgage payments that it was more sensible to pay mortgage payments and own the property, provided you could get a good enough deposit, than it was to rent. So that's how I did it.
Cool. Tony.
Yeah.
We turned it around. We went from probably one of the worst segments in radio to one of the most mediocre. And I couldn't imagine anyone I'd rather do it here. One more time.
I mean, there you go.
And I couldn't imagine anyone I'd rather do it with than you.
Listeners, for those of you who listen to this and think this is a seamless episode, what you don't realise is David and I make so many mistakes that he's sitting there pressing a button and re-editing it so it sounds better. So can you imagine this final version that you're hearing is the best that we could possibly do together with manipulation? How terrible is that?
F*** you.
David, good night.
That's another week of This Is Going Well, I think, with David Cooper. Thanks for listening to all the stuff that I put out for you to listen to. I really appreciate that you tuned in to this show. I really appreciate it. I already said that. I hope you have a nice weekend and you see some of your family members if you're not estranged from them, because you should see your family or not. I don't care. I hope you will listen next week. If you don't, I won't do anything, because I'm not the boss of you. I'm not the boss of you, so do whatever you want. This Is Going Well, I think, is the name of the show. I should have probably stopped singing minutes ago, but here we are. I'm gonna continue for the rest of this 2-minute track. Regrets, I have many of them right now, but I don't know if I can stop singing yet. Okay, I can now. I should check if the Metropolitan Opera's hiring. Maybe I could get an audition.